Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to take a look at yet another updated RunCam camera. Every time I think I've got them all, they bring out another one. So this is the latest version from RunCam of the Owl. Now we've looked at the Owl series as it's developed over the past year and a bit, and the original Owl was a very small compact camera. It had an external voltage regulator and it worked really well in low light conditions, but it wasn't as great in daylight and it didn't have all the colour and the other things that some of the other cameras did. Now as part of the refresh, then that was put into a more standard HS 1177 style enclosure, and that was called the Owl Plus. And the Owl Plus had all of the same performance as the original Owl, but this time it also gave us some of the connections with things like the on-screen display, the standardized housing, and some other pieces too. Now what I've done is I've actually put all of the RunCam review videos, in fact all the videos of FPV camera, in a playlist. So go and have a look at that if you want to see all the comparison videos, because it's almost getting impossible to try and keep on top of comparing with which. The third camera that's worth mentioning that was a night camera or a very low light camera was the Night Eagle. Now that was a black and white only camera and performed spectacularly well in really low light conditions and actually allowed for night flying. And in fact I used the Night Eagle in a couple of videos where we did some stuff in very low light, and I was actually using an infrared flashlight at the time just to test how sensitive it was. The challenge with the Night Eagle was that it was only that black and white image, and that's the way that a lot of the cameras tend to work from RunCam. The ones that have this very high sensitivity, like this new RunCam Owl 2, tend to have a full colour image when they can handle the light, and when there isn't enough light it kind of goes into a monochrome image and boosts the contrast, etc., so you can still see. Now in this video what we're going to do is we are going to have a look at the new camera. First of all we'll do the unboxing, I'll show you how it arrives, we'll have a quick look at the specs, then I'll show you some footage both flying around in the daytime and at night. I don't think I'll be giving anything away here in saying that it performs well in both of those conditions, but there's a camera I think that might pip it at the post for daytime flying. Then I'll bring up the specs and compare them with a couple of the other cameras that we've looked at from RunCam, because it's starting to get a little bit complicated trying to figure out what camera you use in what situation, because RunCam have had so many and they keep improving them. It's kind of tricky to figure out which one you need for what kind of flying. So let me compare the specs with things like the Swift 2, which is a big favourite of mine. I love the Swift, it's a great camera, and also the Eagle 2 as well, and we'll have a quick look at that and hopefully that'll give you an idea of when you choose the Owl 2, a Swift 2 or an Eagle 2. So first of all let me just show you how this thing arrives. When you open the box, it's a standard RunCam box, then the camera's there at the top. It is a plastic enclosure this time, and they give you a couple of enclosures, the one with this bigger back piece and then the smaller enclosure with the flat back that you can use if you're going to be putting it in something like a quad where you don't have the additional mount points to lock it into a particular angle. Very similar in size and form factor to the Eagle 2 that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. And for those of you that watched the review video of the Eagle 2, you remember me talking about the fact that I was disappointed that it didn't have the full on-screen display and it didn't have the VBAT pin that allows you to connect up the main flight battery voltage and have it displayed on your camera. But this one does, which I'm really pleased to see. Underneath the camera then, as you pull it up, you have all the other pieces. You have the mounting hardware, the screws, and also the frame as well if you don't have already a mounting frame in the quad or whatever you're popping it into. And under that then you have a couple of cables to connect to things. One is more of a standard FPV cable, the other one is a 5-pin cable that also sends out not only the plus 5 volts and ground that the camera needs in the video, it also has connections for the microphone, the audio out, because this little thing has a mic too, and also the VBAT in. And that blue wire is the one that you connect to your battery. Also have the new on-screen display joystick in here as well, that little 2-pin one that is pretty much standard now across the entire range with this new camera, and you are pretty much ready to go. So let's talk about the specs. So this camera at the moment is on the website for about £34.78. Well, not about, exactly £34.78. Interestingly, it's exactly the same price as the Eagle, and that definitely invites a direct comparison, and we'll do that in a moment. The specs themselves, if you look at the website, you can see that it's a 1/2 inch sensor, 700 TVL lines. It has a field of view of 150 degrees, so we don't have options here for the lens. It has an integrated on-screen display, integrated microphones already talked about, pretty huge signal to noise ratio, wide electronic shutter, automatic gain control, minimum illumination of 0.0001 lux, which is exactly the same as the RunCam Eagle that we looked at a while ago. Wide dynamic range, huge voltage input range again, which is the same as all the modern cameras from RunCam. Anything from 5 to 36 volts and this little thing will be happy, and it's nice and lightweight too. It's about the same weight as a RunCam Swift 2, about 14 grams. So let me just show you how to navigate the on-screen display in case you haven't seen any of the other RunCam reviews. There are two menus in this camera because it has the full RunCam on-screen display. The full RunCam on-screen display has two ways of accessing. The first is if you just press the middle button of the joystick that you've got plugged into the back of the camera, you access the standard menu, and in here is tons and tons of settings that you could play with for hours at a time on how the camera performs, what the white balance is like, what the modes are doing between day and night, when it's going to switch over from the day mode to the night mode, how it's going to handle wide dynamic range, whether you've got digital noise reduction turned on. All this stuff is available through this single menu. However, you can also, by holding the joystick up for 2 seconds, access this other menu here. And this other menu allows you to turn the elements on and off for the main part of the screen, as well as also adding your own name or customizing it, so when you're flying around it kind of shows your own pilot ID. Now, just like the other cameras that we've looked at that have the full on-screen display, the other options then are if you hold the joystick down for 2 seconds, it allows you to select and move the middle element of the on-screen display around. So if you want, you can put your name at the top. If you press and hold it to the left for 2 seconds, you can move the left element, and similarly with the right element. So with this one joystick, you can actually do an awful lot with the camera and set it up how you want. And there is a little extension cable in the kit. So if you're going to hide the back of the camera away in the middle of your model, then you can use that extension cable so you can still plug this little on-screen display joystick into it without having to take the camera out. In the way it performs as it flies, it's pretty good. This is what daylight footage looks like, and it's handling it okay. The reason I'm saying okay, not fantastic, is that you will see a massive difference between when I'm flying towards the sun and when I'm flying away from it. When I'm flying away from it, it's handling everything pretty well. When I'm handling towards the sun, it's struggling a little bit. We're not getting any large white vertical lines across the image, which is good. The sun is just off the frame at the top here, but you can see that it is overexposing a little bit. We're losing a little bit of detail on the ground, even though it's using its digital wide dynamic range and all those other features that we tend to get on these RunCam cameras now. At night, the performance is fantastic, as you'd expect. So here in the main image is what the OWL 2 can see. In the bottom right hand corner, just taken a little video with a normal camera, and this is pretty close to what it looked like to the naked eye. And again, just like with a Night Eagle review, you can see an awful lot in very low light conditions, and you can see that what the camera's doing here is, as I move it around, as it gets a decent amount of light, it's trying to maintain a colour image with a little bit of noise in there, but it's managing it. And then when there's not enough light at all, it flicks into a black and white image, and that monochrome image is more than enough for you to fly around in. So it's worthwhile actually putting the comparison of these different cameras that I keep talking about side by side so we can talk about it. So here are the 3 lots of settings for the RunCam OWL 2 that we're looking at right now, the RunCam Eagle 2 that we looked at a couple of weeks ago, and the RunCam Swift 2. And actually the Swift now has 3 or 4 different versions. It has the Mini as well, and we've looked at all of those. Again, all of that's in the playlist. But if I put them side by side, you can see the differences. So the big difference here is the horizontal resolution. They're using completely different sensors, but an awful lot of the rest of it is the same. It's probably easier if I just highlight the bits that I think are making the difference here in the way these cameras are performing. The first one is whether or not it's got an integrated on-screen display, whether it's got an integrated microphone, and what the sensitivity to light is. And those, I think, are the three big things that you need to be considering that will let you know which of these cameras you should be popping on your model. So in summary, what do I think? Well, I like the fact that it's got a wide range of sensitivity. I love the fact that it doesn't matter when I'm flying in really bright sunshine or I'm flying in really terrible low light conditions, the camera is going to give me an image, even if it is in black and white. I do like the fact that the features of the Swift 2 that I've been a big fan of have appeared on this camera as well. The addition of the full screen on-screen display is useful for those that like to tweak settings, but there maybe is a little bit too much in there, and the flight that I've just shown in the daytime was using all the defaults, and it might have been better if I'd spent 10 or 15 minutes playing around and turning things on and off and changing settings. It might have been a slightly nicer image. But for some pilots, the fact that you have to do that to get a good image out the camera will be a bit of a deal breaker. It does have the battery monitoring pieces on there as well. Again, a huge fan of that feature because not all of us put these cameras onto quadcopters where there is an integrated on-screen display that's going to do all that for us. It means that you can add it onto something like a fixed wing model or even just a very basic flying wing and connect that little flying blue lead to the battery, and you can see at a glance exactly how long you've been flying and the health of the main flight battery too. Again, it's got the mic and the audio out for those that want it, and then all the rest of the settings are pretty common with all of the other cameras in the range. So for me, there are a couple of considerations. The first one is there is only one lens. It's a 150-degree option. With some of the cameras in the lineup, you do get to choose the lens that you want. It's only one aspect ratio, so if you have something like Dominator V3 goggles or some of the wider angle goggles like Headplays or Quantum Cyclops or those kind of things where using a 16:9 camera can be fun sometimes, that's not an option here. And it definitely doesn't perform as well in the daylight as something like a RunCam Eagle. It performs nicely over the entire range, but for me, if I was going to be flying the majority of the time in the day and I wasn't bothered about the on-screen display or the microphone, I would go for an Eagle every time. But if you like the microphone and like the on-screen display and you are one of those people that like to go into the menus and tweak things, then the RunCam Owl 2 is definitely worth a look. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release one or two extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.